Your kids would just make a mess of everything. My sister-in-law Rachel announced at Sunday dinner, her voice wrapped in that sugary sweetness she always used when she was being cruel. The holiday baking showcase is for children who actually have some skill in the kitchen. We don't want Sophie and Tyler ruining the photos. I looked across the table at my daughter and my son. Sophie was 9, Tyler 7. I watched my daughter's face fall the way a child's face falls when someone they love makes them feel small. She pressed her lips together and looked down at her plate. Tyler, who still hadn't learned to hide his feelings the way adults do, just blinked hard a few times and went quiet. My husband Daniel was traveling for work again. He missed these dinners more often than not lately, which meant I was always the one sitting across from his sister alone, absorbing whatever she decided to dish out that week. I set my fork down carefully and said, Sophie and Tyler have been baking with me every weekend since they were old enough to stand at the counter. Rachel laughed, the kind of laugh that's designed to make you feel foolish for disagreeing. Oh, I'm sure they've made some cute little cookies at home, but this is different. We're doing this at Maison Dorée. It's a real culinary studio, professional equipment. There are going to be photos and honestly, we've already planned the whole thing. It's going to be beautiful. My mother-in-law nodded along, and my father-in-law studied his dinner roll with great interest. Maison Dorée. Of all the places Rachel could have chosen. I almost said something right then. I nearly laughed. But instead I lifted my water glass and took a slow sip and let her keep talking. Because Maison Dorée wasn't just a culinary studio. It was the place my mother had built with her own hands over 23 years. The place she had named after the golden light that came through the tall windows on Sunday mornings when she used to let me stand beside her and learn how to laminate croissant dough. When she passed 2 years ago, she left it to me, her only child who had inherited her obsession with butter and flour and the particular patience required to make something beautiful from scratch. Nobody in the family knew. My mother had been a private woman and I had respected that. The studio ran itself beautifully under my manager Marco, and I stayed mostly behind the scenes, developing new programs and expanding the teaching kitchen. It wasn't a secret I kept out of strategy. It was just never anyone's business. Until now, apparently, it was going to become very relevant. Well, I said as Rachel finished describing the tablescapes she had already planned, I hope everyone has a wonderful time. She reached across and patted my hand the way you'd pat a child who just lost a game. I know it stings a little to be left out. Maybe next year, when the kids are older, we can find something more their speed. That night, after I tucked Sophie and Tyler in, I sat on the edge of Sophie's bed for a few extra minutes. Mom, she said quietly, staring at the ceiling. Is it because we're not as good as Aunt Rachel's kids? Her cousin Madison was 11 and had taken one baking class at the Y. Her cousin Bryce was 12 and had, as far as I knew, never voluntarily entered a kitchen. No, baby, I said. That is absolutely not why. Then why? I smoothed her hair back from her forehead and thought about how to answer. Sophie had been making pie crust from memory since she was 7. Tyler could temper chocolate. They had grown up in my kitchen the same way I had grown up in my mother's. Flour on their noses and butter under their fingernails, learning that patience and attention and love were the real ingredients in anything worth eating. I think, I said carefully, that it might be time to show the family what you actually know. Sophie's eyes got bright. At Maison Dorée? At Maison Dorée. But Aunt Rachel said. Aunt Rachel, I said, doesn't know everything. The next morning I called Marco before I even made coffee. Your sister-in-law made a reservation, he said, before I could finish explaining. Large party, private event room, the Saturday before Christmas. She called 3 times to ask about custom tablecloths. I know, I said. Let the reservation stand. But I have some things I'd like to add to that day. Marco had worked with my mother for 18 years before she passed the studio to me. He was quiet for a beat, then I heard the smile in his voice. What did you have in mind? I told him about the junior baking program I had been developing for the past 6 months, a structured class for children ages 6 through 12, focused on real technique, not just holiday fun. I had been waiting for the right moment to launch it publicly. I had a small group of kids already enrolled in test sessions, 8 children from the neighborhood, all of them coached by my former culinary school classmate and close friend Maya. The Saturday before Christmas seemed like exactly the right moment for a soft launch. Same day as the family event? Marco asked. Right next door, I said. In the main teaching kitchen, there was a pause. Then Marco laughed, low and quiet, the way my mother used to laugh when something delighted her. In the days that followed, Rachel's social media turned into a countdown. Photos of custom apron orders she'd placed for the whole family, coordinated, monogrammed, everything color-coded. A flat lay of ribbon spools and vintage cookie cutters she'd sourced from an antique shop. A video of herself walking through the studio's website with sparkly finger emoji overlaid on the screen, pointing at the amenities. She tagged everyone in the extended family. She tagged her friends. She tagged people I had never met. She did not tag me. The Friday before the event, she called me. I could hear her arranging flowers in the background while she talked. Just wanted to check in, she said, in that particular tone she used when she was not actually checking in on anyone. Make sure there are no hard feelings about the kids. I just think it's better this way. You know how Tyler gets when he's overstimulated. And the studio is very nice, Claire. I just want the photos to look cohesive. Don't worry about us, I said. Sophie and Tyler have plans for that Saturday. Oh good, she said, clearly relieved. Something fun for them. A movie maybe. Or something like that, I said. I ended the call before I could say anything else. That evening I sat the kids down at the kitchen table with a bowl of brown butter and talked through what the next day would look like. Their faces changed completely. The flatness Rachel had put there over the past 2 weeks lit up like a kitchen coming to life. Can I do the laminated dough? Sophie asked. The real kind, with the folds? That's exactly what you're doing, I said. Tyler drummed both hands on the table. What about me? Chocolate tempering, the whole demonstration. And if you want, the ganache piping. He looked at me with enormous gravity. I've been practicing. I know you have, I said. I did not tell them we were doing this to prove something to their aunt. I told them we were doing it because Grandma had built something beautiful and it was ours to take care of. And taking care of it meant filling it with exactly the kind of baking she had always believed in, serious, joyful, and completely without shortcuts. The morning of the event was cold and clear, the kind of December morning that makes everything look like it was frosted overnight. We arrived at Maison Dorée an hour before Rachel's party was scheduled to check in. The studio smelled the way it always smelled, vanilla and caramelized sugar and something deeper underneath, something warm and flowery that I had been breathing in since childhood. Marco met us at the back entrance, the one that opened directly into the main teaching kitchen. He had set up 8 individual stations, each one stocked with ingredients and tools. Maya was already there with the junior program students, 8 kids in clean white aprons, bouncing slightly with excitement. The way children bounce when they are somewhere they want to be. Sophie and Tyler found their stations and went completely still in that focused way they did when they were about to work. It was the same stillness I remembered in my mother. Maya pulled me aside. They're ready, she said quietly. Honestly, your 2 are the most prepared kids in this cohort. I nodded. I already knew. At 10 o'clock sharp, I heard Rachel's party arrive in the lobby. I heard her before I saw her, that same carrying voice sailing through walls. These aprons are custom, they're not interchangeable. Everyone needs to find their name. Madison, yours is the pale rose. Don't grab Bryce's. Yes. They have the stand mixers ready. I confirmed. Where is the person who handles setup? I stayed in the teaching kitchen. Marco handled the greeting. About 20 minutes later, through the half-open door between the teaching kitchen and the private event room, I heard the first sign of trouble. What do you mean the ganache is pre-made? Marco's calm voice. The event package includes pre-prepared components for decorating. Yes. The mixing and baking portions were not included in the booking. I specifically wanted the children to bake from scratch. That was the whole point. For a baking from scratch experience, we do offer the full junior program curriculum. That's actually running in the main kitchen today. If you'd like to take a look, I booked a private event. Yes, and the private event package includes decorating, plating, and the photo station. Baking from scratch is a different tier. Rachel's voice rose just slightly. I want to speak with whoever is in charge. There it was. Marco appeared in the doorway of the teaching kitchen and looked at me with a perfectly composed expression that I had come to understand very well over the past 2 years. She's asking for the owner, he said quietly. I untied my teaching apron, folded it over the back of a chair, and walked through the door. The private event room was beautiful. I had approved the renovation of it myself 8 months ago. White oak tables, pendant lighting, the original terrazzo floor my mother had preserved when everything else was updated. Rachel had brought her custom tablecloths anyway. I noticed, pale green linen layered over the studio's own cream ones. Her coordinated aprons were hung in a row on the wall hooks like a small pastel gallery. She was standing in the center of the room with her hands on her hips, my mother-in-law and father-in-law arranged behind her like quiet wallpaper, and the various children and adult cousins spread around the edges of the room, looking at their phones or inspecting the counters. When I walked in, Rachel's expression cycled through several things in quick succession. Surprise. Confusion. A restarting of her face into its usual arrangement. "Claire," she said. "What are you doing here?" "Marco said you wanted the owner," I said pleasantly. "That's me." The room went very still. My mother-in-law made a small sound. Rachel's mouth opened. Closed. What do you mean that's you?" "Maison Dorée," I said. "My mother built it. She left it to me when she passed." I watched the information travel across Rachel's face like weather. "You own this studio?" "I do." "Since when?" "Since my mother opened it 23 years ago, technically. In my name, for the past 2 years, there was a pause that had a very particular texture to it, the texture of a room full of people recalibrating everything they thought they knew. But you never," Rachel started. "Said anything." I finished. "I thought about it when you were planning this event. But I thought it might be better to show you than to tell you." I paused. That's something my mother always believed. My father-in-law put his hand on his wife's arm. From the other side of the wall, sounds drifted through the low rhythm of focused work, children's voices asking technical questions, Maya's patient explanations. And underneath it all, the smell of butter beginning to brown. Rachel turned her head toward the sound. "Is that the junior program?" I said. "Would you like to see it?" I did not wait for her to answer. I just turned and opened the door between the rooms. What Rachel saw first was the row of stations, each one occupied, each child bent over their work with the particular intensity of someone who has been taught to take what they're doing seriously. What she saw second, I watched her register. This was Sophie. Sophie stood at the marble slab station, her dark hair pulled back, working a block of laminated dough with the heel of her hand in the even, controlled way I had taught her, the way my mother had taught me. She counted her folds under her breath. She did not look up. "Those kids are building better tents than ours," Sarah's youngest had said at the campsite in Rachel's borrowed story. This was the same moment, different room, different medium, same revelation. "Is that Rachel?" said again. "Sophie," I confirmed. "Your niece." At the next station, Tyler was standing over a small pot of tempered chocolate, testing the temperature with a probe thermometer, tilting the bowl to check the viscosity the way I had shown him. He looked up when he heard voices and saw his aunt standing in the doorway. He gave a small wave, then looked back down at his chocolate because he was at a critical stage and he knew it. "They've been coming here on weekends," I said. "For the past year. They're in the junior program cohort." Maya came over from where she'd been circulating and stood beside me. "Your kids are genuinely talented," she said, addressing this to Rachel directly but without any sharpness in her voice. "Sophie has real instinct for dough work. Tyler's palate is remarkable for his age. He catches flavor imbalances that even adult students miss." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. My mother-in-law walked past us and stood near Sophie's station, watching her granddaughter work. She didn't say anything right away. She just watched, and I watched her watching, and I thought about my mother, who had never once doubted that her grandchildren were capable of extraordinary things if someone took the time to teach them. "She looks just like you did," my mother-in-law said finally, softly, more to herself than to anyone. The afternoon rearranged itself after that. Rachel's coordinated event continued in the private room, the pre-made ganache, the sugar cookies, the photo station with its pastel backdrop. But something had shifted in its center of gravity. The cousins kept drifting to the doorway of the teaching kitchen to watch. Madison, who was 11 and had informed Sophie at a family dinner 3 weeks prior that baking was boring, stood with both hands pressed against the door frame watching Sophie fold dough, and could not seem to make herself leave. "Can I try?" she asked finally, addressing Maya. Maya looked at me. "There's a station open," I said. "Come in." By mid-afternoon, 4 of the 6 cousins had abandoned the private event to work alongside the junior program students. My father-in-law had rolled up his sleeves and was standing at the ganache station with Tyler, who was explaining the science of emulsification with the seriousness of a very small professor. Tyler had gotten this from my mother. She could explain anything through food. Rachel stood in the doorway between the two rooms for a long time. I did not go to her. I let her come to me. She did, eventually, while Sophie was leading her cousin through the proper way to test if dough was proofed. I didn't know about your mother's studio, Rachel said. She was not looking at me. She was looking at Sophie. I mean, I knew she baked. I knew she was passionate about it. I just didn't know that she built something real, I said. Not unkindly. Rachel pressed her lips together. I said some things about your kids. You did. I said them to their faces. You said them to their faces, I agreed. She was quiet for a moment. Sophie heard everything I said at dinner. Yes. And she still came here and did. Rachel gestured at the room, at her niece patiently coaching her own daughter through something. All of this. She didn't come here for you, I said. And I said it gently, because it was the truest and most important thing I could tell her. She came here because she loves this, because her grandmother taught her to love it. She wasn't trying to prove anything to you, Rachel. She was just doing what she does. Rachel absorbed this. I watched it move through her. I was trying to create something perfect, she said finally. The photos, the matching aprons, all of it. And I assumed your kids would disrupt that. I didn't even know them. I just assumed. I know, that's not. She stopped. Started again. That's not fair to them. No, I said. It isn't. She turned to look at me directly then, for the first time since I'd walked into the private room and introduced myself as the person she'd been asking for. Her expression had lost its usual arrangement. She looked younger, somehow, less armored. I owe them an apology, she said. That's between you and them, I said. And you, she added. I owe you one too. I thought about my mother, about the way she used to say that the kitchen had a way of showing people who they actually were, because there was no faking patience, and there was no shortcut for care, and eventually what you put into something always showed up in what came out. Rachel did apologize. She did it that afternoon, while the December light came through the tall windows and fell across the flour-dusted counters the way it always had on Sunday mornings when I was young. She sat down with Sophie and Tyler and she told them that she had been wrong, and she told them that she hadn't known them as well as she thought she had, and she told them she was sorry for making them feel like they didn't belong somewhere they had every right to be. Sophie listened carefully and then said, very seriously, "It's okay, Aunt Rachel. But next time, you should ask us first before you decide we can't do something." Tyler was more direct. "We've been coming here since forever," he said. "Grandma taught Mom everything and Mom taught us. We really do know what we're doing." Rachel laughed, a different laugh than the one I was used to hearing from her. Less high, less sharp. More real. "I can see that," she said. "My mother-in-law found me by the window later. While everyone else was cleaning up their stations, one of my mother's non-negotiable rules, which I had inherited along with everything else. You clean what you use, and you leave a kitchen better than you found it. She built this place over 23 years, my mother-in-law said. It was not a question. She did, I said. And she left it to you. Because I understood what it was for, I said. It wasn't about the property. It was about this. I looked at Sophie showing her cousin how to properly store the laminated dough they'd made together, wrapping it in parchment with the same careful attention I'd watched my mother use 1,000 times. It was always about passing something on. My mother-in-law was quiet for a moment. Then she said, she would have loved today. She's the one who planned it, really, I said. She just did it 20 years in advance. Daniel called that evening when I was driving the kids home. Sophie and Tyler were in the back seat, both of them drowsy and flour-dusted and satisfied in the specific way that only comes from spending a day doing exactly what you were meant to do. Rachel called me, he said, sounding slightly disoriented, the way he always sounded when his sister departed from her script. She said you own Maison Dorée. I do, I said. Since when? Since Mom passed it to me. You knew she left me the studio. I knew she left you the studio, he said slowly. I didn't realize it was Maison Dorée. That's where Rachel booked her hole. Yes, a beat. And you let her. I thought it might be instructive, I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed long and warm and a little stunned. Sophie and Tyler were there. They ran the junior program demonstration. Sophie did laminated dough from scratch. Tyler tempered chocolate and did the ganache piping. In front of Rachel. In front of everyone. Another pause. How did Rachel take it? I checked the rearview mirror. Sophie had her head against the window, her eyes closed. Tyler was holding a small bag of the chocolate truffles he'd made. He'd refused to eat a single one on the way home, insisting he was saving them for Daniel. She apologized, I said. To me and to both kids. I think she meant it. Did you? He started, then stopped. Were you trying to humiliate her? I thought about this honestly before I answered. No, I said. I was trying to show her something she couldn't see from where she was standing. There's a difference. He understood. Daniel was not a complicated man, which was one of the reasons I loved him. He understood the difference between punishment and correction, between revenge and truth. I should have been there, he said quietly. Yes, I said. You should have. I'll be home Thursday. I know. Tell the kids. He stopped again, and I could hear him working through something. Tell them I'm proud of them. Tell them yourself on Thursday, I said. They'll want to hear it from you. In the weeks that followed, something shifted in the way our family arranged itself around each other. It was not dramatic. Families rarely change dramatically. They change in small, daily adjustments that accumulate into something new, so gradually you only notice it when you look back. Rachel signed Madison and Bryce up for the junior program at Maison Dorée. She did this without being asked. She called me first to check if it was all right, which was a thing she had never done before. Checked with me about anything. Of course it's all right, I said. That's what the program is for. Sophie and Tyler took their roles as senior students seriously. Sophie helped Madison with her dough work with a patience that she had definitely not inherited from anyone on Rachel's side of the family. Tyler explained chocolate tempering to Bryce with the same small professor seriousness he'd used with my father-in-law, and Bryce, to everyone's mild astonishment, turned out to have a genuine aptitude for it. My mother-in-law started coming to the studio on Sunday mornings. Not to bake or not at first. She would sit at the counter with a coffee and watch while I prepped for the morning classes, and we would talk. About my mother, mostly. About things I hadn't known she'd noticed or remembered. About the particular quality of the light through those tall windows on winter mornings, which she had apparently remarked on years ago when my mother first showed her the space, and which my mother had taken as confirmation that she had chosen the right building. She was very proud of you, my mother-in-law said one morning, out of nowhere, the way important things tend to arrive. I didn't ask her to explain. I just nodded and kept working, and let the compliments settle into the kitchen the way warmth settles into dough slowly, completely, changing everything it touches. The holiday showcase that Rachel had originally planned became a monthly family baking session at the studio, rotating between beginner and intermediate skill levels depending on where everyone was in their learning. Rachel brought her coordinated aprons to the first one and everyone laughed, including her, which was the most significant change of all. Every time I unlocked the front door in the morning and walked through the studio that smelled like butter and vanilla and my mother's particular idea of what a life well lived looked like, I thought about the property deed in my office. Not as a document of ownership. Not as leverage I had held in reserve. Just as evidence of something my mother had understood long before I did, that the most powerful things you can pass down to the people you love are never the things that can be listed on paper. They are the things that live in the hands. In the patience. In the knowledge that you are capable, and that you belong, and that no one else's assumptions about you have any power unless you let them. Sophie knew this now, the way she knew how to read a dough by touch and how to tell when butter has gone from brown to burnt by smell alone. Tyler knew it too, in his bones. My mother had known it first. She had just taken the long way around to teach it to all of us. And sometimes, on those Sunday mornings when the light came through the tall windows and landed on the marble counters in long gold strips, I could feel her in the room, the way you feel the presence of someone whose work surrounds you in the walls, in the tools, in the children leaning over their stations with their whole hearts in their hands. Some things, she used to say, you can only learn by doing them. She was right. She always was.